During the autumn of 1940, Henry J. Kaiser stood on the docks of Richmond, California, looking at empty land where a shipyard would soon rise. He was 58 years old, a successful construction engineer who had built dams, highways, and bridges across the American West. He had never built a ship. He knew almost nothing about naval architecture or maritime engineering. Traditional shipbuilders considered him an amateur, an outsider who had no business entering their specialized industry. But Kaiser saw something the traditional shipbuilders didn't see. He saw that America would need ships, thousands of ships. Britain was under siege by German U-boats that were sinking merchant vessels faster than British shipyards could replace them. If America entered the war, which seemed increasingly likely, the nation would need a massive merchant fleet to transport troops, equipment, and supplies across the Atlantic and Pacific. Traditional shipbuilding methods were too slow. The United States needed a revolution in ship production, and Kaiser believed he could deliver it. The problem was time. Traditional shipyards built ships using methods that had evolved over centuries. Each vessel was essentially handcrafted. Skilled workers shaped and fitted thousands of individual components. Riveting crews connected steel plates one rivet at a time. Construction took approximately 8 to 12 months per ship. Some vessels required longer. The process was slow, labor-intensive, and expensive. Kaiser proposed something radical: building ships like automobiles. Use assembly line techniques. Prefabricate major sections in separate facilities. Weld components together instead of riveting them. Employ unskilled workers who could be trained quickly. Standardize designs completely so every ship was identical. Reduce construction time from months to weeks or even days. The traditional shipbuilding establishment thought Kaiser was insane. Maritime engineers explained patiently that ships weren't cars. Each vessel faced unique stresses from ocean conditions. Welding was untested for large vessels and potentially dangerous. Prefabrication would create structural weaknesses. Unskilled workers couldn't produce quality ships. The entire proposal violated centuries of accumulated shipbuilding wisdom. Kaiser would fail, probably catastrophically, possibly sinking ships and killing crews. Kaiser didn't argue. He simply started building. In November 1940, construction began on the Richmond Shipyard No. 1. Within months, multiple yards were under construction along the California coast and in Portland, Oregon. Kaiser hired anyone willing to work, regardless of experience. He recruited women, minorities, and workers from industries having nothing to do with shipbuilding. He established training programs teaching welding, fitting, and assembly in weeks rather than years of apprenticeship. The first ships Kaiser's yards produced were British cargo vessels ordered under emergency wartime contracts. These were simple utilitarian freighters designed for mass production. The British called them ocean-class ships. Americans would later call similar vessels Liberty ships. The design was deliberately basic: a simple hull, steam engine, single-screw propeller, minimal accommodations, maximum cargo capacity. These weren't elegant ships. They were steel boxes designed to carry cargo across oceans as cheaply and quickly as possible. Kaiser's yards began launching ocean-class ships in early 1941. The first vessels took approximately 230 days to build, which was actually faster than traditional methods, but not revolutionary. Critics nodded knowingly. Kaiser's approach wasn't significantly better than established techniques. But Kaiser wasn't finished innovating. Every ship that left his yards taught lessons that improved the next ship's construction. The breakthrough came from systematically applying assembly line principles. Kaiser's engineers analyzed every step of ship construction, identifying bottlenecks and inefficiencies. They redesigned workflows. They created specialized teams for specific tasks. They built massive cranes that could lift prefabricated sections weighing hundreds of tons. They developed jigs and fixtures that held components in precise alignment for welding. They standardized procedures so every worker knew exactly what to do. Welding was particularly important. Traditional shipbuilding used rivets to connect steel plates. Riveting required skilled crews who heated rivets, positioned them precisely, and hammered them into place. The process was slow and labor-intensive. Welding offered potential advantages: stronger joints, lighter weight, faster assembly. But welding large ships was technically challenging. Welds could fail catastrophically if done incorrectly. Maritime authorities were skeptical about welding's reliability. Kaiser's engineers developed welding techniques specifically for ship construction. They trained thousands of workers in welding basics. They created quality control procedures ensuring every weld met standards. They tested welded joints extensively, proving they were stronger than riveted connections. Despite continued skepticism from traditional shipbuilders, Kaiser committed fully to welding. His ships would be welded, not riveted. The modular construction approach was equally revolutionary. Instead of building ships sequentially from keel to deck, Kaiser's yards built major sections simultaneously in different locations. The bow section was assembled in one area, the stern in another, engine room in a third location, deck houses and superstructure in additional facilities. When sections were complete, massive cranes lifted them and positioned them on the keel. Welding crews connected everything together. What had taken months now took weeks. By mid-1941, Kaiser's yards were launching ships in approximately 150 days. Still not revolutionary, but improving steadily. Then in December 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. America entered World War II. Suddenly, the need for merchant ships became desperate. The U-boat campaign in the Atlantic was intensifying. German submarines were sinking Allied vessels at alarming rates. Britain was suffering severe supply shortages. The United States needed ships immediately and in vast quantities. The U.S. Maritime Commission ordered emergency shipbuilding expansion. 18 new shipyards were authorized, many using Kaiser's techniques. The government placed orders for hundreds of Liberty ships, a standardized design based on the British Ocean-class vessels. The Liberty ship was simple, practical, and designed for rapid production. Length 441 feet, beam 57 feet, displacement 14,245 tons fully loaded. Single steam engine producing 2,500 horsepower, maximum speed approximately 11 knots. Cargo capacity 10,000 tons. The Liberty ship design wasn't impressive by peacetime standards. These vessels were slow, uncomfortable, and utilitarian. But they could be built quickly and cheaply. They could carry enormous cargo loads. They were simple enough that minimally trained crews could operate them. And they could be produced in numbers that would overwhelm German U-boat campaign. The Liberty ship became the foundation of Allied logistics in World War II. Kaiser's shipyards ramped up production dramatically in early 1942. Construction time dropped from 150 days to 100 days, then to 70 days. By mid-1942, Kaiser's Richmond yards were completing Liberty ships in approximately 45 days. Traditional shipbuilders were stunned. What Kaiser was achieving seemed impossible by conventional standards. But the statistics were undeniable. Kaiser's yards were producing ships faster than anyone thought possible. The workers Kaiser employed came from every background imaginable. Farm workers who had never seen ocean, factory workers from automobile plants, women who had never held welding torches, black workers excluded from traditional shipyards by discriminatory unions, Mexican-American workers, young people, old people, anyone willing to learn. Kaiser's training programs took workers with zero experience and made them productive in weeks. The atmosphere in Kaiser's yards was unlike traditional shipyards. Workers understood they were contributing directly to war effort. Every ship completed meant more supplies reaching Britain, more troops transported overseas, more equipment delivered to combat zones. The work had purpose beyond mere employment. Production became competition. Yards challenged each other to build ships faster. Workers took pride in construction speed records. Safety was emphasized despite rapid production. Kaiser insisted that speed couldn't compromise worker safety. Yards installed extensive safety equipment. Supervisors enforced safety protocols. Medical facilities were established on-site. Kaiser understood that injured workers slowed production more than careful procedures. The safety record in Kaiser's yards was actually better than many traditional shipyards, despite the accelerated pace. By late 1942, Kaiser's Richmond yards were completing Liberty ships in approximately 30 days on average. The fastest ships took less time. One vessel, the SS Robert E. Peary, was built in extraordinary circumstances. In November 1942, Kaiser's Richmond Yard 2 announced they would attempt to build a Liberty ship in less than a week. The attempt was partly publicity stunt, partly proof of concept, partly morale boost for workers. The SS Robert E. Peary was laid down on November 8, 1942. Prefabricated sections had been prepared in advance. Cranes, workers, and equipment were positioned for maximum efficiency. The entire workforce understood the attempt was special. When the keel was laid, thousands of workers mobilized. The construction proceeded around the clock with overlapping shifts. Welding sparks illuminated the yard day and night. Cranes moved constantly, positioning sections. Workers swarmed over the growing hull. November 12, 1942, the SS Robert E. Peary was launched. 4 days and 15 hours after the keel was laid. The ship was essentially complete. Final fitting and testing brought total construction time to 4 days, 15 hours, and 29 minutes. It was the fastest ship construction in history. A Liberty ship that traditional methods would have taken 8 to 12 months to build had been completed in less than a week. The SS Robert E. Peary's construction demonstrated what assembly line techniques could achieve. The ship wasn't a mock-up or incomplete vessel. It was a fully functional Liberty ship that would serve throughout the war, making multiple voyages across the Atlantic and Pacific. The speed record proved Kaiser's methods worked. Traditional shipbuilding wisdom had been wrong. Revolutionary approaches could succeed. The impact on American shipbuilding was immediate and profound. Every shipyard in America adopted Kaiser's techniques. Welding replaced riveting. Modular construction became standard. Prefabrication expanded. Training programs proliferated. By 1943, America was launching Liberty ships at rates that seemed impossible in 1940. Multiple ships per day entered service. The U-boat campaign, which had nearly succeeded in strangling Britain, was overwhelmed by ship production. German naval commanders recognized by mid-1943 that they couldn't sink ships faster than Americans built them. U-boat crews worked desperately, sinking hundreds of Allied vessels. But American shipyards produced faster. For every ship sunk, 2 or 3 replacements entered service. The mathematics of industrial production defeated the U-boat campaign. German submarines couldn't sustain the casualty ratios necessary when America produced ships at unprecedented rates. The Liberty ship program ultimately produced 2,710 vessels between 1941 and 1945. These ships carried the majority of American war material overseas. They transported millions of tons of food, fuel, ammunition, vehicles, aircraft, and equipment. They carried troops to invasion sites. They brought wounded soldiers home. They sustained Britain through the darkest years of war. Without Liberty ships, Allied victory would have been impossible, or at least far more costly and prolonged. The production numbers tell only part of the story. Behind each Liberty ship were thousands of individual workers whose lives were transformed by Kaiser's shipyards. Women who had been housewives became welders. Black workers excluded from many industries found good-paying jobs. Young people just out of high school operated massive cranes. Immigrants contributed skills from their home countries. The shipyards became laboratories of social change as much as industrial innovation. Wendy the welder became an iconic symbol of women shipyard workers. Her image appeared on posters encouraging women to join war production. But behind the propaganda image were real women doing genuinely difficult work. Welding required physical strength, technical skill, and mental concentration. Women proved they could weld as well as men, often better because they were more careful and precise. The racial integration in Kaiser's yards was revolutionary for 1940s America. Traditional West Coast industries excluded black workers almost entirely through union restrictions and employer discrimination. Kaiser needed workers desperately and refused to discriminate based on race. Black workers flooded into Kaiser's yards, finding employment opportunities unavailable elsewhere. They worked alongside white workers, Mexican-American workers, Asian-American workers. The yards weren't perfectly integrated or free of prejudice, but they were far ahead of most American industries. This integration wasn't pure altruism. Kaiser needed workers and couldn't afford to exclude qualified people based on race. But the effect was profound regardless of motivation. Thousands of black workers earned good wages, learned valuable skills, and proved they could perform complex industrial work as well as anyone. The experience of integrated shipyard work influenced post-war civil rights movements and challenged prevailing racial assumptions. Women workers faced particular challenges beyond the physical demands of shipyard work. Childcare was a critical issue. Many women workers were mothers who needed somewhere for children during work shifts. Kaiser responded by building childcare centers adjacent to shipyards. These weren't minimal facilities. They were well-staffed, well-equipped centers, providing meals, education, and medical care for workers' children. The concept of employer-provided childcare was rare in 1940s America. Kaiser's centers demonstrated that supporting workers' family needs improved productivity and retention. The shipyard communities that grew around Kaiser's facilities were themselves remarkable. Richmond, California, transformed from a small town of approximately 24,000 people in 1940 to a city of over 100,000 by 1943. Portland, Oregon, experienced similar growth. Housing, schools, hospitals, shops, and infrastructure had to be built rapidly to support the influx of workers. Kaiser was involved in this community development, building housing projects and supporting municipal services. The working conditions in shipyards were challenging. The work was physically demanding. Shifts ran around the clock. Weather could be extreme, with workers laboring in rain, heat, or cold. Safety equipment was basic by modern standards. Accidents happened despite safety protocols. Workers fell, were struck by falling objects, injured by equipment, burned by welding, or hurt in countless other ways. Medical facilities treated injuries ranging from minor cuts to serious trauma. Yet morale remained generally high. Workers understood their contribution mattered. Every Liberty ship they completed meant more supplies reaching troops overseas, more food for starving Britain, more equipment for Soviet forces fighting Germany. The connection between their welding work and soldiers' survival was direct and obvious. This sense of purpose sustained workers through long shifts and difficult conditions. The technical challenges of Liberty ship construction were substantial despite the standardized design. Welding thousands of joints perfectly was difficult. Any weakness could cause catastrophic failure at sea. Quality control became critical. Kaiser's yards developed inspection procedures ensuring every weld met standards. X-ray equipment checked critical welds. Inspectors examined construction at every stage. Ships were tested extensively before delivery. Despite quality control efforts, some Liberty ships developed serious problems. The most publicized failures involved ships breaking apart at sea. Several Liberty ships suffered catastrophic hull fractures where the entire vessel split in half. These failures were terrifying for crews and raised questions about welding reliability and design adequacy. Investigations revealed that certain welding procedures and steel specifications were inadequate. Brittle fracture in cold water caused welds to fail suddenly and catastrophically. The Liberty ship fracture problem was eventually solved through metallurgical research and improved welding procedures. Engineers identified which steel types were vulnerable to brittle fracture. Welding procedures were modified, critical joints were reinforced. Later, Liberty ships incorporated these improvements and proved reliable. But the early failures demonstrated that revolutionary construction methods could have unexpected consequences requiring careful engineering response. Life aboard Liberty ships was uncomfortable but serviceable. Accommodations were minimal. Crews lived in cramped quarters with basic facilities. Food was adequate but not luxurious. The work was routine except when submarines attacked or storms threatened. Liberty ships weren't fast or maneuverable. They plodded across oceans at steady 11 knots, vulnerable to submarines and unable to outrun bad weather. Submarine attacks were the constant danger. U-boats targeted merchant convoys attempting to sink ships carrying war material. Liberty ships were priority targets because destroying them eliminated cargo and sometimes crew. Submarine attacks were terrifying. Torpedoes struck without warning. Ships exploded or broke apart. Crews had minutes or seconds to abandon ship before vessels sank. Survival in cold North Atlantic water was measured in minutes. Thousands of merchant seamen died in submarine attacks, surface attacks, mine strikes, or storms. Liberty ship crews suffered casualty rates comparable to combat soldiers. Yet they weren't military personnel. They were civilian merchant seamen working for commercial shipping companies under government contract. Their courage and losses were often overlooked compared to military forces, but their contribution was essential. The U-boat campaign against Allied shipping was Germany's best chance to win the war by strangling Britain and preventing American reinforcement of Europe. From 1940 to 1943, U-boats sank millions of tons of Allied shipping. At the campaign's peak in 1942, German submarines sank ships faster than replacement. Britain faced potential starvation and collapse. The situation was desperate. But Liberty ship production reversed the equation. In 1943, American yards produced ships faster than U-boats could sink them. New Liberty ships entered service daily. Replacement exceeded losses. The tonnage available to Allies increased despite submarine attacks. Admiral Karl Dönitz, commander of German U-boat forces, recognized by mid-1943 that the submarine campaign had failed. He couldn't maintain casualty ratios high enough when Americans produced ships at such rates. The mathematics were inexorable. Germany produced approximately 1,100 U-boats during the war. At any given time, perhaps 100 to 150 were operational. Each successful submarine sank an average of 4 to 5 merchant ships before being destroyed or removed from service. This meant German U-boats could sink perhaps 4,000, 5,000 merchant ships over the entire war. America alone produced 2,710 Liberty ships, plus thousands of other merchant vessels, warships, and support craft. The production numbers overwhelmed submarine campaign. Liberty ship construction also supported other Allied shipbuilding. The techniques Kaiser pioneered spread to Britain, Canada, and other Allied nations. British yards adopted welding and modular construction. Canadian yards built similar vessels called fort and park ships. The entire Allied merchant marine benefited from innovations developed in Kaiser's California yards. Economic impact of Liberty ship program was enormous. The Maritime Commission spent approximately $2 billion on Liberty ship construction, approximately $30 billion in current dollars adjusted for inflation. This represented massive government investment in industrial capacity. The investment created hundreds of thousands of jobs, stimulated related industries, and demonstrated that government-industry partnership could achieve results impossible for either sector alone. Kaiser personally became wealthy from shipbuilding contracts, though not as wealthy as often assumed. Government contracts included profit limits and cost controls. Kaiser's real fortune came from other wartime industries, including steel, aluminum, and magnesium production. But his reputation was built on Liberty ships. He became symbol of can-do American ingenuity and industrial innovation. Post-war, most Liberty ships were quickly retired. They were built for wartime emergency, not peacetime commercial competition. Faster, more efficient vessels replaced them. Some Liberty ships were sold to foreign shipping companies. Others were mothballed in reserve fleets. A few continued operating for decades in specialized roles. The SS John W. Brown and SS Jeremiah O'Brien remain operational today as museum ships, the last surviving operational Liberty ships. The Liberty ship's design influenced post-war maritime engineering. The concept of standardized, mass-produced merchant vessels continued. The welding techniques pioneered on Liberty ships became standard throughout shipbuilding. Modular construction methods spread to other industries. Kaiser's innovations permanently changed how large structures were built. Kaiser's broader legacy extended beyond shipbuilding. He applied mass production techniques to other industries. Kaiser Steel produced steel using innovative methods. Kaiser Aluminum pioneered lightweight metal production. Kaiser Permanente, the healthcare organization, grew from medical services Kaiser provided shipyard workers. Kaiser demonstrated that civilian industrial management could solve problems that traditional military-industrial approaches couldn't. The Liberty ship program represented triumph of American industrial capacity. In 4 years, 18 shipyards produced 2,110 standardized cargo ships using revolutionary construction methods. These ships carried the equipment, supplies, and troops that won World War II. Without Liberty ships, Allied victory would have been impossible. The Atlantic lifeline to Britain would have been cut. Soviet forces would have lacked American equipment. D-Day invasion couldn't have been supplied. The Pacific Island campaigns would have failed. Traditional shipbuilders who mocked Kaiser in 1940 were proven wrong comprehensively. Ships could be built like automobiles. Welding was superior to riveting. Unskilled workers could produce quality vessels with proper training. Assembly line techniques worked for shipbuilding. Every skeptical prediction failed. Kaiser's impossible achievement became reality through systematic application of industrial engineering principles. The SS Robert E. Peary's 4-day construction demonstrated what was possible with complete commitment and perfect execution. That speed was exceptional and not sustainable for normal production. But it proved the concept. Ships could be built far faster than traditional methods allowed. The average Liberty ship construction time of 30 to 45 days in 1943 and 1944 was still revolutionary compared to pre-war standards of 8 to 12 months. Individual worker stories illuminate the human dimension of Liberty ship production. Joseph James, a black welder from Texas, found employment in Kaiser's Richmond yards after being refused work in traditional industries. He learned welding in a 2-week training course and became skilled enough to teach others. His wages allowed him to buy a house and support his family at middle-class standard impossible in Texas under Jim Crow. After the war, he used skills learned in shipyards to start a successful welding business. Margaret Maggie Smith, a farm wife from Oklahoma, took a bus to California in 1942, seeking shipyard work after her husband deployed overseas. She had never held a job outside her family's farm. Kaiser's training program taught her welding. She worked night shifts for 2 years, sending money home to support her children who lived with relatives. When her husband returned in 1945, she had saved enough for down payment on small house. She credited shipyard work with changing her understanding of what women could achieve. Chen Wei, a Chinese-American from San Francisco, found that Kaiser's yards would employ him despite discrimination he faced elsewhere. His father had been a skilled metal worker in China, but found only laundry work in America. Chen learned crane operation in Kaiser's yards and proved so skilled that he trained other operators. He worked in shipyards through the war and afterward became union organizer, fighting for fair treatment of minority workers. The experience of integrated shipyard work shaped his lifelong activism. Stories like these multiplied across thousands of workers. Kaiser's yards provided opportunities unavailable elsewhere. People discovered capabilities they didn't know they possessed. Women became welders, crane operators, supervisors. Black workers proved they could perform complex industrial work given opportunity. Young people learned trades that supported them for decades. Immigrants contributed skills and perspectives from diverse backgrounds. The childcare centers Kaiser established were pioneering examples of employer-supported family services. The Richmond Child Service Centers operated around the clock, matching shipyard schedules. They provided hot meals prepared by nutritionists. Trained teachers offered educational programs. Medical staff cared for sick children, so parents didn't have to miss work. The centers charged low fees, subsidized by Kaiser. At peak operation, they served over 1,000 children daily. These childcare centers demonstrated that supporting workers' family needs improved industrial productivity. Mothers who knew their children were safe and well cared for could concentrate on work. Absenteeism declined. Worker satisfaction increased. Productivity improved. Yet after the war, most childcare centers closed as women were pushed out of industrial work. The lesson about employer-provided childcare was forgotten for decades until revived by late 20th century employers. The housing developments built for shipyard workers faced different post-war fate. Some became permanent communities, others were demolished. Richmond's wartime housing ranged from temporary dormitories to more substantial family housing. The rapid population growth strained every municipal service. Schools operated double sessions. Hospitals overflowed. Transportation systems were inadequate. The social challenges of rapid war-driven urbanization were as significant as the industrial challenges of ship production. Safety culture in Kaiser's yards evolved throughout the war. Early emphasis on speed sometimes compromised safety. Accidents were frequent. But Kaiser recognized that injured workers couldn't produce ships. Safety programs expanded, equipment improved, training emphasized safe procedures. Medical facilities were enhanced. By 1944, Kaiser's yards had better safety records than many traditional shipyards, despite faster production pace. The role of government in Liberty ship success was substantial but nuanced. The Maritime Commission provided contracts, financing, and coordination. The War Production Board allocated steel and other critical materials. The government essentially guaranteed market for ships. But Kaiser and other shipbuilders provided innovation, management, and execution. The success demonstrated that government-private partnership could achieve results neither sector could accomplish alone. Maritime unions initially resisted Kaiser's employment practices. Traditional unions maintained strict apprenticeship requirements and discriminatory membership policies. Kaiser's rapid training programs and inclusive hiring threatened union control over maritime trades. Conflicts erupted repeatedly. Eventually, pragmatic accommodation emerged. Unions recognized war emergency, required modified practices. Kaiser accepted union presence in return for labor stability. The compromises weren't perfect, but allowed production to continue. Raw material logistics for Liberty ship construction were massive. Each ship required approximately 3,300 tons of steel plates, shapes, and structures. Over 2,700 ships meant roughly 9 million tons of steel. Add other materials including wood, copper, brass, rubber, and hundreds of manufactured components like engines, boilers, propellers, and equipment. The supply chain stretched across America. Steel mills in Pennsylvania, engines from manufacturers in different states, propellers from specialized foundries, all had to arrive at shipyards in proper sequence. Transportation of materials relied on American railroad network. Trains carried steel plates, engines, and equipment to West Coast shipyards. The railroads themselves were stretched thin, supporting military movements and civilian needs. Prioritization systems determined what moved when. Liberty ship components received high priority but still competed with other critical war production. The logistics operation was as impressive as the ship construction itself. Environmental consequences of rapid shipyard expansion were generally ignored during wartime emergency. Oil and chemical contamination entered waterways. Air quality declined from welding fumes and industrial emissions. Shipyard sites weren't cleaned properly. Decades later, many former shipyard sites required extensive environmental remediation. The wartime focus on production above all else created long-term environmental costs. Engineering innovations pioneered during Liberty ship construction influenced shipbuilding for decades. The welding procedures developed for Liberty ships became industry standard. Modular construction spread throughout maritime engineering. Prefabrication techniques were refined and expanded. Post-war commercial shipbuilding incorporated lessons learned from wartime emergency production. Modern shipbuilding still uses principles Kaiser pioneered. The Liberty ship's basic design had limitations that became apparent in service. The slow speed made vessels vulnerable. The single-screw propeller and simple engine limited maneuverability. Cargo handling equipment was minimal. Accommodations were uncomfortable. Weather-damaged ships sometimes developed serious structural problems. Later vessel classes addressed these limitations. Victory ships were faster. Later cargo ships incorporated improved designs. But Liberty ships achieved their purpose, moving maximum cargo with minimum construction time. Strategic bombing of German industrial capacity was intended to reduce their war production. But Allied bombing didn't prevent Germany from building submarines, aircraft, or other weapons in substantial quantities through 1944. What defeated Germany wasn't primarily destruction of production, but rather Allied ability to outproduce German output. Liberty ships exemplified this. Even if Germany had sunk every existing Allied merchant ship, American production would have replaced them. The industrial capacity gap was too vast. Soviet Union received Liberty ships through Lend-Lease. These ships carried American equipment to Soviet ports. Soviet crews operated some Liberty ships. The vessels helped sustain Soviet resistance during Germany's Eastern Campaign. Soviet appreciation for American material support was mixed with political suspicion. but the practical value of Liberty ships was undeniable. Soviet forces couldn't have fought effectively without American trucks, food, fuel, and equipment, all transported on Liberty ships. Pacific Theater Liberty ships faced different challenges than Atlantic vessels. Distances were greater. Port facilities in Pacific islands were primitive or non-existent. Ships often anchored offshore, while cargo was transferred to smaller vessels or barges. Japanese submarines targeted merchant shipping, but were less successful than German U-boats due to strategic focus on military rather than merchant targets. Kamikaze attacks became a threat in late war. Liberty ships proved versatile enough to operate effectively despite Pacific Theater challenges. The emotional significance of individual Liberty ships varied. Some vessels had distinguished service records, others were lost on maiden voyages. Survivors of ship sinkings sometimes viewed Liberty ships as death traps that broke apart too easily. Other mariners praised Liberty ships for reliability and toughness. The vessel's reputation was mixed, reflecting genuine design limitations and operational challenges alongside remarkable overall success. Kaiser's personality and leadership style were critical to Liberty ship success. He was optimistic, aggressive, willing to challenge conventional wisdom. He focused on results rather than processes. He wasn't technical expert, but hired talented engineers and empowered them. He understood public relations and used media effectively to build support. He projected confidence even when facing serious problems. His leadership transformed what could have been just another shipbuilding program into a symbol of American industrial might. Post-war assessments of Liberty ship program were generally positive despite some vessel failures and operational problems. The ships achieved their purpose. They were built quickly and in sufficient numbers. They carried the cargo that sustained Allied war effort. They demonstrated that revolutionary approaches could succeed when properly implemented. The cost was reasonable given the results. The social impact of inclusive employment was significant, though often overlooked. Modern shipping industry bears Kaiser's influence, though direct connection isn't always recognized. Container ships, bulk carriers, and tankers use construction techniques pioneered with Liberty ships. Welding is universal in modern shipbuilding. Modular construction is standard for complex vessels. The concept of standardized ship designs produced in series comes directly from Liberty ship experience. Kaiser's revolution became industry standard. The Liberty ship veterans who survived the war often maintained connections to their ships and shipyard experiences. Reunions brought together crews and builders. Museum ships hosted events. The Liberty ship's role in winning World War II was commemorated. As veterans aged and passed away, preserving Liberty ship history became priority for maritime museums and historians. The SS John W. Brown and SS Jeremiah O'Brien, the two surviving operational Liberty ships, serve as floating museums and historical monuments. They conduct occasional cruises, demonstrating how Liberty ships operated. They host educational programs, teaching younger generations about World War II maritime history. They preserve not just ships, but the stories of people who built and crewed them. Henry Kaiser's legacy extended beyond Liberty ships. His later ventures included healthcare, housing, and automotive industries. Kaiser Permanente health system grew to serve millions. Kaiser's housing developments provided affordable homes. Kaiser's attempt to break into automobile manufacturing with Kaiser Frazer cars ultimately failed, but demonstrated his willingness to challenge established industries. His career embodied American entrepreneurial spirit and industrial innovation. The impossible trick mentioned in contemporary accounts of Liberty ship production wasn't actually a trick. It was systematic application of industrial engineering principles, mass production techniques, and organizational innovation. Kaiser's achievement was recognizing that shipbuilding could be revolutionized, using methods that had transformed automobile manufacturing. Traditional shipbuilders couldn't see this possibility because they were too invested in conventional approaches. Kaiser's outsider perspective was advantage. The four-day ship construction achieved with SS Robert E. Peary became legendary but also misunderstood. Critics noted this was exceptional, not typical, and represented more publicity stunt than sustainable production. Fair points, but the record demonstrated what was technically possible. It showed that dramatically faster construction was achievable. It proved skeptics wrong about fundamental limitations of shipbuilding. The symbolic value exceeded the practical production impact. The broader lesson from Liberty ship experience is about innovation under pressure. World War II created desperate need for merchant ships. Traditional methods couldn't meet the need. Revolutionary approaches were necessary and became possible because emergency overrode institutional resistance to change. Kaiser provided vision and execution. Government provided resources and support. Workers provided labor and skill. The combination achieved what peacetime conditions probably couldn't. Liberty ships appeared every 4 days on average during peak production in 1943. 18 shipyards working simultaneously meant multiple launchings daily across America. The sight of new ships sliding into water regularly became routine. Each launch represented thousands of workers' effort, millions of dollars invested, and addition to Allied fleet that would help win the war. The steady drumbeat of launches was psychological as much as material victory, demonstrating American industrial capacity to friends and enemies alike.